Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Barely Bookish podcast. Today, we are continuing our conversation about Interview with the Vampire Season 2. We are on episode 5, and holy crap.
Oh my god.
Oh, and I'm joined by Candace again, also.
Yeah, hi. Hi, everyone. Oh my god.
Oh my god. What is happening?
Oh my god. So much is happening.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the front half of this show was good,
Mm-hmm.
and it was solid,
Mm-hmm.
but the back half of this show so far feels like a fucking freight train.
Oh my god, I
Holy
know!
shit. Oh my god. Oh, woof.
Yeah, fully expanding upon. Anne Rice is like taking notes. You know what I mean? Like, she was like, all right, I see the vision, I see the energy, and I love it. This is the gay drama Anne Rice wanted. You know?
It is. Holy shit. Hot damn.
Yeah. Oh my god. Let's just start going chronologically because I think we're gonna have a lot to talk about at the end.
Correct.
Yeah. So we're having our normal interview setup, which is always at the dining table, which cannot be comfortable.
No.
Okay. Like,
I mean,
I'm
they're
like,
rich, so you know those chairs are probably real cozy.
yeah.
But still.
I do have rich people chairs because my mom's law office was moving. So I have like these fancy, what you would not think is comfortable, but they are very comfortable chairs. They are much more comfortable than my couch. So you know what? I rescind my statement.
You get what you pay for.
I'm telling you, these chairs, my mom looked them up because they're like mahogany. I think they're like $1,000 a piece. It is insane.
Whoa.
And they were just like, oh yeah, we're gonna scrap these. And my mom said, thank you, I will take them. So I have now a bunch of fancy rich people dining chairs, and also my table I use as a desk. So
Great find.
I'm like, this is what thrifting was meant to be, honestly. But so okay, they're in there, but it's probably more comfortable than their couch dining chairs, having the whole thing. And Armand's like got this rich, pompous crypto boy walk in with like the most like douchebag sunglasses I have ever seen.
Oh my god.
Like very Jersey Shore energy.
Yes. It's like sunglasses. Jersey Shore meets Eurotrash.
Oh yeah.
That's the energy.
Oh yeah. Walks in, talks shit, and then he's like, yeah, so you're gonna like hunt me down with your little like twig legs or whatever the fuck. And I'm like, okay. What's happening?
Baby doll.
I thought this was a kink thing.
Same. I was like, when he says he's gonna hunt him, is he gonna race him in a car? Are they going to run on foot? Like what is, I don't understand. Then how offended he was seeing Louis. Who the fuck is that?
Yeah.
I was like, so do you know that this is sexual hunting?
That's what I thought was happening.
Why are you worried about this man that's sitting at the table? And then Armand dismisses him. Oh, that's just a friend.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh. And Louis' face is just like this ambivalent, but like you can see the pain in his eyes, but he keeps his face like whatever, like he doesn't care. But like, it's a knife, dude. It's a knife in his fucking chest. You can tell it is. It's brutal.
Yeah. I was like, okay, so some sort of primal kink, go off, you know, whatever you're into, Armand, go off. And then he's like, oh yeah, this is actually how he hunts. He like only hunts a couple times a year. And if they win, they get a bunch of crypto. And Daniel was like, okay, but they never win. And he goes, I mean, well,
it's not violent, I promise. I know you think it's violent, but he's never violent. Armand is never violent. That's not his way. And I'm like, I've seen this movie about the abused wife. I've seen it. I've seen I know this, right?
Yeah.
Fucking, he says that Armand goes for people who do harm to the world, right? Shitty people, right? Because that kid is like obviously like a fucking wart of humankind, right? Like they don't hide that this dude is a shithead, right?
Yeah.
So Armand either hunts like shitty people, or he says like people for whom love is just easy, right? But can never get it back. So like insinuating that it's like hopeless romantics that won't be missed. And I'm like, okay, are you listening to yourself, or like are you hearing what's going on here?
I'm like, oh, it's almost like you're saying he hunts people like you. Okay.
I mean, Like, don't make me say it.
Literally. Like, it's every time I watch this movie, or like I guess it's a TV show, every time I watch them interact, I'm like, you have friends, like we all have friends like this, where
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh, he's like actively abusive. Like he tears down,
Mm.
not like, and I guess like abusive, I feel like abusive is kind of a strong word, but I'm like, this person tears you down
Mm-hmm.
constantly, makes you feel
Mm-hmm.
like shit. Like, while it's not technically abuse, it's like, this is toxic, and we're all
It's,
watching this unfold.
I would say you could argue that that's emotional abuse.
True.
Like, it's emotional abuse, right? Like, you
Yeah.
try to feel good about yourself, and that person's like, here's why you're wrong.
Yeah.
That's awful, right? And like, I feel like Armand is not as loud
Hmm.
as all that. But to me, that's the scariest form of emotional abuse
Yeah.
because it's harder to see, right? You don't really know that you're in it until suddenly you're just like this person who lacks self-confidence and has a bunch of self-doubt, and you're a different person than you used to be, right? Like, you wake up
Hmm.
one morning and that's, you're just different. And I feel like that's what this episode is kind of low-key about. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
they give us that snapshot in the beginning to kind of like, as like the overture, right, to tell us what the rest of the show is kind of going to be about, what we're going to be talking about. Like, even with the scene, like that same scene, Armand leaves, and it's clear, like, Daniel immediately realizes that he has Louis to himself for the first
Hmm.
time in this entire trip that he's made, right? And I think throughout this show, there have been moments where, like, we've talked about it. Like, Louis will go to say something and Armand will interrupt, or Louis will say something and Armand will contradict it, or say, "That's not how I remember it, honey," or whatever,
Hmm.
right? And at first, it feels helpful, and then it feels condescending. And I feel like in this episode, it starts to be an open door because Daniel realizes that there's places in his mind where he also has like overwritten kind of concepts.
Hmm.
When he talks about I love how they give Daniel the space to still be a bitch. Like, I
Yep.
love that they give him room to like
Hmm.
still be just a sassy little fucking shit, right?
Yep.
He fucking said, note to self, follow up with Armand on the feeding schedule and care.
Yeah.
Talking about Louis being a pet. And I was like,
Yep.
ooh,
Yep.
ooh.
So funny. So funny.
uh,
Yeah, I love that he's like, we're gonna switch gears for a second. And I'm like, oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. So we get a lot of flashes of young Daniel in this, and I'm like, young Daniel is so cute. Like
He's
he's
precious.
just a little guy, and you just want to
Those
be like,
flashbacks are scary as fuck though.
oh, they
Like,
are.
when you think about being like, because Daniel's like 60, right? So
Yeah.
when you think about like getting older, like, one of the things that's a little scary is that sometimes your memory doesn't work the same, right? And for some people that's Alzheimer's or dementia, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes it's a bigger issue. But like, I can't imagine like weird things flashing back that you didn't remember happening to you, right?
Hmm.
Like, you have no memory of events, but you're seeing these weird random flashbacks because they're things you've actually seen, but your brain is not pulling them up as something that belongs to you. So there's just
Hmm.
these weird visions in your mind. Like, I really like the way that they depict the flashbacks because they feel scary, they feel disruptive, and I feel
Yeah.
like they should. That's what they're designed to be. You know what I mean?
So Daniel is like, hey, Louis, question for you. Did we bang? Yes, no.
And Louis like, ooh woo, why do you think we banged, Daniel? I'm like, Louis, now is not the time. Put
Like,
your dick back in your pants, sir.
I
He's
love that
asking you a
Daniel's
serious
like,
question.
or Louis like, are you suggesting something? Like, we got an hour. Like,
Uh-huh. Oh, do you want to go right now? Daniel's like, stop it. Also, you're handsome, but
yeah.
stop it. I'm not
So
falling for
funny.
your shit again. We're talking right
So
now.
funny. Yeah. Like, Louis is like, hold on, I'm gonna track him on Life 360 really quick. Like,
Oh
we
my
got
god.
time.
We've got 1.5 hours before he
Yeah.
comes home. I'm like,
God.
Louis.
Literally, I'm like, put it in your
Nobody said
pants.
that, Louis. Nobody said that. Literally, like the meme. Nobody.
Yeah.
Louis, so you want to fuck me?
Literally.
Calm down.
Oh my god, it's so funny.
I really, really love that, like, we're getting this glimpse in the flashback. And I
Mhm.
love the way that they use the book. as well, right? There's a lot of blank filling in. And again, we haven't read the other books in the series, so we don't know if this does somehow come up in later books. Like in
Mm-hmm.
Armand's story, for example, this might be a whole thing. We don't know. But for the most part, this feels like something that was new and made for the show specifically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really love how they bring the opening of the book in this way. Like, this whole story has been told out of chronological order for people who have liked the book and the movie version of
Mm-hmm.
Interview with the Vampire. So being able to kind of revisit this very first scene, right, but in a flashback, is so interesting to me. Like, I didn't know what to expect in this episode, and that really made me happy. And I really love who they cast as young Daniel. I feel like his mannerisms aren't the same as older Daniel,
Mm-hmm.
but they're similar enough that you can see how he becomes the man that he is now, right? And I feel like because young Daniel is so carefree and so nonchalant and so free-spirited, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it almost kind of underscores what a huge moment it was for him, a formative moment for him to have that fated interview with Louis, right? Like, that
Mm-hmm.
changes him forever, literally, right? Quite literally changes him forever as a person. So I love that, like, the actor kind of pays attention to that and tries to give Eric Bogosian, right? Give that actor's performance, but
Mm-hmm.
with this like bit of youth and foolishness, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the current Daniel, he's like the complete opposite. He's so careful with everything he says and how
Mm-hmm.
he says it, right? And what he does. So I really, really love that attention to detail. It's really beautiful.
Me too.
Hmm.
So good. This
Yeah.
show is so good.
So good.
So then also just a quick like him being in the past.
Oh my god.
So like most of this episode is Daniel and Louis back in the 70s having conversations in the 70s. At one point, he asks Louis when he sees Louis' fangs because he's like, "You're not a vampire, ha ha ha."
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
he like sees Louis' fangs and he's like, "Oh my god, are you the Zodiac killer?"
I love the way they use time and place in this show.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we've talked about it before, but like, I love just the quiet way they use time and place, asking him if he's the Zodiac killer because they're in San
Mm-hmm.
Francisco. Just like perfect. Like,
Yeah.
perfect. And I love that Louis is like, "What?" So random. I'm sorry. Just the reaction was, it got me. It got me.
Louis like, "Oh, that guy. I forgot I killed the Zodiac killer." Like that's the energy Louis has. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I also like that when we do get those moments where they're not in the flashback, time is still passing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, the camera shows you that time is passing.
Yeah.
Um and I really enjoyed the fact that, like as they start kind of pressing into this territory, that Louis, it becomes clearer and clearer that Louis has just as many gaps of
Mm-hmm.
that time as Daniel, right?
Yeah.
And Daniel's like really unsettled by that because he's like, "Shouldn't you remember of all people? Why don't you fucking
Yeah.
remember?" Right? Like, it's like a really weird moment. And I feel like Louis starts to realize too in the moment, like, you watch that kind of realization come over both of them, that they both
Mm-hmm.
have these gaps in their memory. And I love Daniel being like, "Listen, how many days did you have me in that fucking room?"
Mm-hmm.
Right? For the first interview. "How many days
Yeah.
have I been here now? I want 20 minutes just for myself. Don't laugh at me.
Mm-hmm.
This is 20 minutes just for me." But as
Yeah.
much as that 20 minutes is for Daniel, there's like this underscore, like this undertone that it's
Mm-hmm.
also for Louis, right? Like, this very, like, very, it's almost imperceptible, but there's this insinuation that, like, it's not really just for Daniel, that Daniel is
Yep.
trying to be like, "What did we go through?" Right?
Yep.
Mm, mm.
And the fact that like Louis does not even question the fact that he doesn't remember until Daniel
Yes.
brings it up. He's like,
Yes.
"Oh fuck." He's like, "Why do
Uh-oh.
I also not know?"
Mm.
Because like Louis is like, "Oh yeah, it was like a traumatizing moment." And he's like, "But what was traumatizing about it? Why was I traumatized?" There was never
Mhm.
Louis is not one to reflect. He like likes to act like he's very dramatic and like,
Mhm.
"Oh, woe is me. My life is hard. Like, look at me. I'm very like prophetic. Is that the word that I want? Poetic. Like,
Poetic, yep. Mhm.
yeah. Um, where he like has these moments where he like acts like he's self-reflecting, but really he's commentating on like the last 20 minutes of his life, you know?
Mhm.
Where it's like very much like, "Oh, and I was like a carefree soul, blah blah blah." But it's like he never actually reflects deeper.
Mhm.
very like outside view
Very
looking in of
surface.
yeah.
Agree.
And then it's like the first time he's ever told to like actually reflect, he's like, "Oh my god."
Oh no, I'm
Well,
fucked up.
yeah, he's like, "Someone call the cops right now. Like I'm being held hostage in my own home." You know what I mean?
Please, someone, anyone. Oh
Yeah.
God.
He's like,
Like
"What is this golden cage?" Like,
that's exactly what it is.
yeah.
Um, I really enjoy too, like seeing the scene play out, like of Louis going into the actual interview because, like, Daniel's just there to have a good time, right? It's
Yeah.
clear Daniel's there to party and to like probably be on his knees for 20 to 15 minutes. You know, 20 to
Mhm.
15 minutes with this guy on his knees, on his back, wherever he needs to be.
Yeah.
Get some drugs, smooch a cute boy, and go home. Right? Like
Mhm.
that's his energy.
Yeah.
He's clearly a party boy. He is not a professional, right? And I like that they kind of keep that same tone as the boy in the book, right? The book version of Daniel. Like they make him a little more frivolous, I think, in the show
Mhm.
than we kind of get in the book. But like his flippancy, right? How like laissez-faire he is about everything. Like I loved that. Um,
Yeah.
I love when they cut to like the flashback of Louis like finally getting in on the conversation and he's like railing about Lestat, right? He's like always
Mhm.
carping, always bitching. This fucking guy, he was never fucking happy. You should have heard how he played music. It was garbage. He played with no heart, let me tell you, right? He's like
Lestat
dishing.
crying.
Oh my god, like he's dishing all this dirt about Lestat. And I wrote down LOL, Louis
Mhm.
shit talking Lestat. Some of this is definitely the energy of the actual lines from the book. Because
Mhm.
like we know,
Mhm.
like his descriptions of Lestat are so dispassionate, but there's so much care like underneath the words that he's saying, right?
Mhm.
But he has so many complaints about Lestat in the book, and I'm like, this is exactly this is like a worse version of what we get
Yeah.
in the book, of him just being like, and woe is me, I fell in love with a slick man from the streets. He was so slick, he took me in. He had his way with me. I didn't know up from down. Like it's very like ingenue talking about casting call couch or something, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so, I don't know. It's amazing. It's delightful.
I feel like we've all had that friend where it's like you go to like coffee with them after they break up and they're like, "It was the worst 4 years of my life." And you know what? He was cruel to me the whole time. And it's like, maybe he was, it's
Yeah,
fine. And it's
sure.
like, you're like listening to them and they're like, and you know what? I don't even care that he's got a new girlfriend. And it's like, um,
Baby, you're
I
talking
think
to me
you
about
do.
it.
Yeah,
2
you're like,
hours of this.
you're like, we've just spent the last 45 minutes comparing his nose size to like fucking a shuttle, all right, that just went into outer space. So I do think we might care a little,
Just a
and
little
that's
bit.
fine. That's fine. We're allowed to care. It has only been 15 minutes since you got the text he
Oh
was
my
breaking up,
god.
pre you walking into this coffee date with me. Um, and you know
Fucking
what?
literally the energy.
You're like, we're allowed to care. We can care and we can talk all the shit we want, but we do probably need to acknowledge that there is a level of like you still love him in there.
Yeah, a little
Um,
bit.
and if
We
you
don't
don't
have to
want,
talk about it. Let's
yeah,
just
we don't
hold
have to talk
space for
about
it.
it. You
We'll
know,
hold space, babe. Like,
literally. Have you seen all those TikTok videos recently? Or it's like, the sound of like the bow bow, and it's like them setting down their drinks, and they're like us when we're gonna talk shit for the next 4 hours. Like chips and queso hit the table, like espresso martinis hit the table. Like that's the kind of vibe I think's going on here. You know?
yes, totally the energy. But I feel like Louis is like bringing 150%,
Hmm.
and Daniel is like, "Where's the cocaine?"
Yeah, he's going out of his fucking mind.
Like, I love. So one of the things that I really liked about this scene too, that like told me that they have people consulting on this show that are both gay and probably marginalized in other ways, like they're black people too, that are probably
Hmm.
involved in the writing of and concepting this show. Louis calls Daniel boy,
Hmm.
right, throughout much of this scene. And if we go back to season 1, right, there are moments where white men call Louis boy, right? Because
Hmm.
that's very much a racist tactic, right? Calling an adult man boy is disrespectful. If you
Hmm.
are a white person and that person is black, it's even worse because that's what they used to call people when they were slaves, right? So Louis looking to Daniel and calling him boy, it's like this reversal. like this inverse of like what he's used to, especially when you consider how he met Lestat, right? And like how impressive and how overtaking Lestat was, right? How overwhelming Lestat was with him. It's very much giving that energy and that vibe, right? With the oversharing and stuff like that, right? Like that's how Lestat kind of was with Louis too, right out the gate. And I love like that kind of contrast there, both with the race issue, but also you're like not an ancient vampire, but a pretty wizened vampire, right? You've been around now for almost 100 years, right? You're pulling up on, you know, what, like 80 years at that point, I think is how old Louis is at that moment.
Probably, yeah.
And he's like trying to monologue at like a sassy bisexual journalist, like wannabe journalist, right?
Yeah.
And like everything he's saying, Daniel's just like has like a giggle to it. Like he's not taking him seriously at all. Like the whole time he's just like, you complain a lot. If I were a vampire, I would have a much better way to use the gift. I'd be amazing at being a vampire. Let me tell you. I'm like, Daniel, why aren't you a millennial or fucking Gen Z? That is absolutely the most fucking millennial or Gen Z thing. I will be the best vampire. Like,
literally.
Yeah, okay. Sure you will, friend. I'm gonna learn it all overnight. Don't you? There's YouTube. I'll figure it out. I'll know what to do.
Me.
Like that's that's Daniel's vibe, is like, you're complaining so much about your gift, but it's called a gift for a reason. He gets so shitty. And I'm just so like, funny. No wonder he gets mad and bites him. I'd be mad too. I just told you all about my terrible breakup with my fucking gorgeous ex-boyfriend, and all you can say is, well, I could be your current boyfriend if you just give me the gift. Why don't we fuck? Like,
yeah. I mean, it is 100% that energy where it's like, you're like older and you're talking to like a kid and you're like, yeah, and so, you know, I'm back to living with my parents, and you're like, why don't you just like move out? Like, if I was over 18, I would just move out. And you're like, shut the fuck up. You don't even know what taxes are. Like, shut up.
Quiet. Yeah. And then he fucking brings up Claudia too. He's like, yeah, it sounds like neither of them knew how to love you. I could love you. I'm like, babe,
shut up. Like,
put down, I can be your new mistress. Yeah. No one asked you for that. Shush. Shush.
Daniel 100% down to fuck. Like, sign is just on the door. He's like, open and available. Like,
do you need a new wife? I'm a great wife. Yeah. Like, sir, no one asked you for this. You're supposed to be interviewing him in a professional manner, and you didn't even put a tape in the fucking cassette. What are you doing?
So funny. I was screaming where Daniel's like listening to himself, like recording. He's like, that is not professional. That is not professional. I cannot believe I did that. Like, have you ever, like, you know, when you like read your old writing, you're like, yes, oh my God. You're like, I can't believe people liked this. What the fuck? Like,
and then he also has to do it with the person that's on the recording with him. That's like reading your fucking old high school poetry to the person you had a crush on that you wrote about. No.
Kill myself.
I'd rather die.
Yeah. Rather die. Oh my God.
15, 20 years later, would rather die. Nope.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah, then Louis obviously bites Daniel, drinks his blood, gets high as shit off cocaine.
High as a kite. Oh my God.
Oh my God. So now like Armand busts in to break up the party. He's like, I haven't seen you in days. Like, what the fuck? Like, I was at home picking lint off the sofa.
Dude, why did he say that?
Oh
what
my
did
God.
he say that for? Because now Louis like, yeah, picking lint off the sofa. Ooh, I'm Armand. I have nothing else better to do in this world. I'm like, this is not the time, Louis.
Like, this is it's giving Armand as like 50s housewife. You know what I mean? Where she's like, the casserole was in the oven. My skirt was on. My hair was done.
Yep.
And you did not come home. Yeah. What? Do you have another meeting with your secretary? Like,
Louis fucking goes for the throat, calls this man, steps into his space, looks him dead in the eye, and is like, you're a fucking soft beige pillow. And I was like, that is the most homosexual own I've ever heard in my life. Right? Like that's soul crushing. That's heartbreaking. Not only are you soft, not only are you a pillow, but you're beige.
Oh,
bruh. Yikes.
Yeah.
You know what it reminds me of? There's an episode of Schitt's Creek where Annie Murphy fucking decides to go date Bear. Um I can't remember her name. How can I not? Alexis. So
Mhm.
Alexis decides she's going to go and date like that guy in town or whatever. Mutt. That's his name, not Bear. So Alexis decides she's going to date Mutt, who's like that really like hippie granola kind of guy.
Mhm.
And she's obviously like a classy ass bitch, right? Who like is super superficial and like only cares about the finer things. And David jokes that he's gonna offer her. I think he buys her like a bike or something like that as a gift, and
Mhm.
it's like an old bike that has like rust and shit on it. She's like, "What am I supposed to do with this? I don't know how to ride a bike. Like, who rides bikes? What kind of person? Do you have
Yeah.
someone drive you places, right?" Like, she has no understanding of it.
Mhm.
And her brother is like, "Just you wait. You guys are gonna get married. He's gonna buy you a pear-shaped opal." And I was like, "Ooh, sick burn."
So funny.
It's like one of those burns that like you have to like understand like the gaze to
Yeah.
get how devastating it is. To
Mhm.
me, this is on the same level. Pear-shaped
Mhm.
opal, soft beige pillow, just eviscerated. Eviscerated.
He's like, "You're like shopping off the rack." And he's like,
That
"Off the rack."
how dare you? So good. Oh my god. And then Armand admits that he's basically been eavesdropping the
Mhm.
entire time. He was at
Mhm.
home picking lint off the sofa, eavesdropping.
Yeah. Oh
Listen.
my god. So funny. And then like the whole time he's like, he calls Louis calls Armand boring. And he's like, "Louis, this he's like, "Well, you're over here banging your boyfriend." He's like, "And talking about fucking Lestat. I'm the only one who noticed that the floor slightly slopes. We're going to have to fix that before we can rent it, like before we can sell the house, like sell this apartment and rent it out, blah blah blah." And like Louis like, "I think we have bigger fucking problems than the floor sloping, but okay." Like Armand is like narrowly focused
Yep.
on like what he
We
can
have a
control.
life we are building together,
Yeah.
okay? We are together. We are building something.
Mhm.
Louis like, fuck your fucking life. Fuck your apartment. I'm going through something. Can't you see? And Armand's like, you're always going through something, man. You're always going through something, babe.
Yeah.
Peak fucking gay vampire though, that you're gonna like look at the blood running in the one direction and go, gotta fix those floors. Like,
So funny. Oh my god. And then Armand says the truest thing in this entire show. He's like, "It always circles back to him." And I'm like, "Damn.
woof.
It do though. It do."
Woof. Listen, he is the pot calling the kettle black though.
Yeah. No,
Because I
100%.
I'd argue the only reason Armand is the way that he is because of Lestat, right?
Mhm.
Which like I have more to say about that eventually.
Mhm.
But like Armand is somebody who absolutely is shaped by the person that he's with. He's that friend, right? He's
Yeah.
that friend that like dates somebody who likes country music and suddenly wears a cowboy hat everywhere. That's who he is as a person.
Mhm.
So I'm looking at him with Louis and I'm just like, you have a lot of nerve.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Lestat owned your thoughts too, buddy. That's why you're so connected to this new boy, if we're gonna be
Mhm.
real, right?
Mhm.
It's giving our boyfriend broke up with us and now we're dating and hopefully he'll see that and get mad, right?
Mhm.
Like that's what it's giving right now. So
Yep.
pipe down.
Literally. Like Lestat is such a third to the
Mm-hmm.
fact that like neither of them are like, "We're not with him anymore." And Lestat's like, "Both of you motherfuckers are banging each other and you see my face."
I
So
I listen in every night, you know.
oh my god.
I'm somewhere in the ether, in the great beyond, and I'm
Yeah.
there with you listening in the darkness, right? Like
To have the control over people that Lestat has, like, oh my
please.
god, like he
How?
haunts his enemies and he doesn't even have to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Free real estate in their brains.
Powerhouse. I also love that like even though Louis is drug addled, it's clear that he's like he starts having problems with his like not his vision specifically, but his mind. Like
Mhm.
he's talking to Armand and there's like things that are just like not connecting in the
Yeah.
moment. He's confused. And it feels like he's confused because of the drugs, but it also feels like maybe something else is happening too, because as Armand
Mhm.
is talking to him, it's starting to happen, right? And one of the things that Louis says before that kicks off is like he asks him, what are you going to be tonight? Like the helpful, sweet nurse, like the loving nurse, or are you going to be a fucking fierce gremlin? And I'm like, okay. So this version of Louis does acknowledge that there are two sides to Armand, even though current
Mhm.
Louis doesn't really have the power to. To
Mhm.
me, that was a big fucking moment. That was a huge tell because current Louis barely has any bad things to say about Armand ever,
Yeah. He's
right?
like, the love of my life.
Tiniest criticisms, but
Mhm.
73 Louis was like, are you going to be the monster tonight, or are you going to be the good one?
Yeah.
Like, that was,
Damn.
I was like, uh-oh, that's not good.
Mhm.
Okay, what's going on here? This is bad.
Yeah, you're like, "Should we all look into this?" Or,
I think we should talk about it.
yeah.
Maybe it's not. I think everybody might need to sit down and have some therapy. Let's have
Mhm.
some talk time, guys. You know?
Literally. Yeah, and then so Louis obviously gets to the point where that's all happening. He's not making sense. He's like, Claudia, Lestat, sprints outside, and then Daniel's like, and you hear that? That's one door banging, and that's a second metal door banging. Where'd you go, Louis? And Louis's like, I don't know. I don't think I went anywhere. And he goes, one door, two door. Where did you go? And like you can see Louis like this is where they're both of their minds are like unknown. Everything's blackness from
Mhm.
here on out. And Daniel's getting flashes of like something more happened after this moment. Armand did not stop you. Like, what happened past here? Turns out what happened was Louis sprints out into the sun and tries to, he's like, final
Yeah.
days. That's it
Yeah.
for me. Like, and they make it out to seem almost like, did he do that because of the cocaine? But like, I don't think coke makes you suicidal.
Mm-mm.
And the fact
No.
that like Daniel is functional, and obviously like, I mean, I don't know anything about cocaine,
Mhm.
but like, I can't assume that whatever it seems that he
It's
does.
actually the opposite.
Okay.
I have done cocaine like once or twice in my entire life because I was
Hmm.
like, I feel like I need to know what it's all about. Why do people like this?
Yeah.
Um, the moment that I tried it, I was like, oh. If you are someone who struggles with self-image or self-esteem,
Hmm.
it'll change your life in one go, which
Yeah.
is extremely dangerous. Like, every person that I've ever met that had a cocaine problem, which, like, I worked in nightclubs and stuff for a while, so I've met a lot of people who have horrible cocaine problems.
Yeah.
When I would talk to them about it, because they would always ask me, "Why don't you do cocaine?" And I'm like, "I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it's worth it." Like, it feels like it's really
Yeah.
expensive, and I don't really get much out of it. And the way that it was always explained to me was, when you're having problems in your life, and
Hmm.
when you kinda hate yourself a little bit or you're struggling with yourself, cocaine goes, "No, you don't." That's the effect of cocaine.
Yeah.
So it's different for everybody. Like, when I tried it, like, I was feeling pretty good about myself. I thought I looked cute that night. I was, like, on the rebound from a bad relationship that had just ended. But I wasn't, like, in the space where things were really, really bad and I was, like, crying all the time, right? I was, like, at the part where I was finally being like, "Okay, well, it's over and that sucks." And, I was in,
Yeah.
like, the acceptance part. And I remember, like, I only did a small amount because I was terrified of it. I was like, "I don't want a problem," right? So
Yeah.
like, did, like, the babyest dose or whatever you might call it, that my friend gave me or whatever. And, the first thing that I noticed was there was a mirror on the back of the bar. The whole back of the wall of the bar was a mirror, and I didn't realize that because it was the first time I'd been there. And I looked up from my drink, and there was someone really hot staring at me. And I was like,
Mhm.
"Who is that? Wow, that person's making eyes at me. They're cute as fuck." But, like, they were behind, like, bottles, right? Because there's bottles there. So I thought that the bar was, like, ovular, and that there was another side to the bar with, like,
Mhm.
drink stuff and, like, and bottles in the middle. But it was me. I was looking at
Damn.
myself, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Who is that fine little girl?" And it was me, and I was like, "Oh, just kidding. It's you." That's good. You love
Yeah.
yourself. That's wonderful. You haven't felt
Mhm.
self-love in a minute. And then I was like, "Uh-oh, that's the cocaine."
Yeah.
And
You're
I
like, "Wait a
went to
minute."
my friend I went to my friend and I was like, "This is how I'm feeling." My friend's like, "Cocaine? It's
Yeah.
good, right?" And I was like, "No, no, because what happens when this is done? That
Yeah.
goes away, right?" She's like, "Yeah, but, then you do more. That's how you know you need more." And I'm like, "No.
No.
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 No, no. I'm okay. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. I'll just feel like shit sometimes. It's okay. It's not a big deal.
Yeah,
I can handle
literally.
it. I've been doing it all this time. For 26 years, I've been feeling a little shitty. I can continue feeling a little shitty.
Mhm.
I don't need this in my life. $80 for a night to have fun with this?
No.
No. I'm
No.
okay. Way too many negatives. But for some people, it's a lot of pros. So for, like,
Yeah.
Louis, to be in that moment, like, I feel like the cocaine made him bold. The
Mhm.
reason he was able to step toe to toe with Armand is because he was high.
Mhm.
But like when he decides that he's going to go outside, I think that's like that's real hopelessness that he's
Yeah.
feeling, like deep down. Like that's deep, deep hopelessness. And the catalyst for him to go outside too was Armand bringing up Claudia.
Yeah.
So like that really is, I like that they keep that from the book, that Claudia was really the best of him and Lestat and symbolized the best of him and Lestat in a way that I don't
Mhm.
think he really understood at the time. But obviously feels later.
Mhm.
And she's like a symbol of their love in a way, in a lot of ways as well. Um, and that's kind of the first time that like they mention Claudia dying, that Louis doesn't get like that Louis doesn't button up. Because
Yeah.
before, like, Louis had softness when he would talk about Claudia dying and losing her and stuff like that, and that she's not around, right? Like, it's kind of implied. They don't really say for sure what happened to her in season 1. And
Mhm.
earlier in season 2, they don't really address it either. We know it's happening because we've read the book. But if you don't know anything, then you don't absolutely know that Claudia is dead, I think, really until that moment that you know that she's absolutely gone, and
Mhm.
that something happened that was not becoming of her, right? You
Yeah.
know that something bad happened to Claudia in that moment, I think. And just the fact that like Daniel plays that clip and Louis like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
Like that's a major moment in someone's life and he doesn't
Mhm.
remember?
Mhm.
That's mortifying.
Yeah. And I also wonder, I was like, is because at this point we have to assume that Armand is playing like mind games with Louis while they're having this fight because he's angry, he's lashing out, like he's playing mind games with everybody, you know?
Mhm.
And so, like, what did he do in his brain to make him run outside? You know?
Yep.
Burns himself to the bone. Whoever does the makeup for this did an amazing
Fantastic.
job. Oh my god.
So good. Especially when you think about how Jacob Anderson looks, because we've seen him shirtless before, right? We've seen him with nothing else on. So
Mhm.
like when you think about how slim he is, they maintain that. Like a lot of like
Yeah.
80s and before makeup, one of the challenges was getting the materials thin enough so that it could just be like a second skin on the actor's body. I
Mhm.
think the first time that you really see them do a really great job with reducing the size of a costume is Alien, right? In
Mhm.
the original Alien, Ridley Scott's original 70s Alien movie, um, the xenomorph, actually, I think for the first 2 Alien movies, maybe even the first 3, the alien is actually played by a person, not just a puppet, right?
Mm.
Like there are some scenes where it's a puppet because they have to like get it to run and stuff like that and chase, but
Yeah.
like the first scene where you see the alien kind of lower its tail. I remember you said that you haven't seen that movie
I
yet,
have
right?
not.
Yeah,
No.
so there's like in every classic horror movie, there's the reveal of the monster, right? In Alien, it doesn't come at the end like a lot of movies do, right? It
Mhm.
comes kind of more toward like the middle to begin, like the beginning to like middle section. So the first time you see the alien, it's like in a room and it lowers itself down to make its presence known, right?
Mm.
And when you see it do that, like when you finally watch the movie, you're going to be so mystified that there's a person in there because the alien is skinny, right? The
Yeah.
xenomorph has like skinny arms and like a skinny, like rib cagey kind of body situation, very tall and very big. Like it's bigger than a man, right? Bigger than a human. So the idea that there is a person inside of that suit is wild because it's so skinny that you know the man inside must be even skinnier if that's how big the suit
Mhm.
is, right? So I feel like one of the things that I loved about the makeup is that like it looks like they've just put a layer of like silicone and latex over him or something because it maintains his shape, his face, right, his body. Like you can tell that that's Louis even though he's burned beyond all recognition. It's not just down to his voice, right? They
Mhm.
don't try to like hide the actor. Really really awesome job. Totally agree. I was so like I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. It was so creepy and gross and disgusting.
Yeah. Oh, it's so cool though. So, uh then we get to the point where Armand has fully unleashed torture on Daniel while Louis is like stuck in bed trying to recover
Mhm.
because Armand grabs him out of the sun, throws him in bed, and he's like, "All right, Daniel, this is your fault. You're the one who caused this. This is all because of you." And Louis is like, "Maybe maybe it's not though. Maybe it's not his fault." Um and then Armand finds the tape while Daniel's like on the ground staring at the dead body of the neighbor who apparently watched Louis run out in the sun and start disintegrating.
Yo, I can't with Armand fucking unraveling the tapes without touching them.
Oh god, yeah.
That moment, because he's holding one of the tapes
Mhm.
and the other two tapes or three tapes are like sitting on the counter next to him, and he's
Mhm.
looking at Daniel. You can feel the predator. That actor is so fucking good. He
So
plays
good.
such a lion and such a lamb
Yeah.
effortlessly. Like he swings between both of those like it's nothing. Like he's swimming in just like a clear pond of water, like a
Mhm.
duck. Like, oh my god, just effortless. Like he's so soft and sweet and benign, but at the same time you're like, this is a coiled snake with gigantic fangs. It's going to devour me in one bite, right?
Yeah.
Like you still feel this predatory, the way he's looking at Daniel, how condescending he's being, right? You know,
Mhm.
like it's thinly veiled rage under there,
Mhm.
like under that very slight and beautiful aesthetic is like this thinly veiled rage. And he's just unspooling the tape, and then as he does that, the other ones start to just drip their fucking tape innards out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
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 that was
so
brutal.
intimidating.
Yeah, he's like he does a lot of eye work too. Like, have you've ever
Mhm.
like seen that whole thing where you can kind of tell when someone's like a psychopath based on their eyes because they have like
Mhm.
they're dead in the eyes.
Yep.
Like it's crazy how he switches like very like doe eye, like innocent, like
Mhm.
oh Louis, to like and blank,
Yep.
and it's like oh
Flat.
my god.
Yeah. And I'm like thinking about what it must be like. Like in the book, I never really identified with the boy outside of like what would I do if this were me, right? That's like kind of
Mhm.
as far as I go. I don't think I ever thought about Daniel Malloy and was like, let me do a character concept study of
Mhm.
Daniel Malloy, right? That's not really the point. You're really there for the vampires, right? Like the boy
Yeah.
is a vehicle. He's like a plot device rather than being a fully fledged character. And this show does such a great job of bringing Daniel to life. And I feel like because they did that, it becomes easier for the audience to feel like they are Daniel, especially in the scene. It is so
Mhm.
uncomfortable because you know what those feelings are like, right? He's there in this squat. It's almost like if you haven't watched the show yet and you're just listening along, um, it's almost as though if you imagine sitting in a chair with your feet flat on the ground,
Mhm.
right? Or maybe on tippy toe, right? On the balls of your feet. And you're squatted down, but you're sitting in a chair. Your thighs are flat and parallel to the ground. That's how Daniel is sitting
Yeah.
in front of him. But there's no chair
Chair
there. He's just there,
floating.
like floating, basically. But then he says, I have a Charlie horse, my leg is seizing up. I have a cramp, my leg is seizing up, it hurts so bad. Then you realize he's not really floating. Armand isn't holding him there, he's paralyzed him, and he's just sitting there in that shape, right?
Yeah.
It's his body is still supporting him. That's why he has the cramp, right? Because he is actually supporting his body like that, and it's not supposed to work like that.
Yeah.
And he's in like really bad shape. Like Armand has smashed him into walls at this point. He's had him fucking bouncing up off the floor and off the ceiling and shit. Like he levitated him, right? Like it's like he's been horrible to this boy. And Daniel is doing everything he can just to like stay present in the moment to like hopefully defend himself in some way, which like,
Yeah.
yeah, right, buddy, you know? And like
Literally.
Armand's pathology is so interesting. He's forcing Daniel into this squat, right? And he's rifling through his mind like it's a filing cabinet, right?
Mhm.
Like in previous scenes, we've seen present day Daniel have those flashbacks, right? And he doesn't know what they're to. He doesn't know what he's seeing. He sees the face of a corpse wrapped in plastic. He
Mhm.
sees a close up of Armand telling him that once he told a girl to put a paper bag on her head and they had sex and she cried after. And that was like a really horrible moment, like pulling up all these really terrible moments. And you don't have context before of why he's doing that. But now you get the context that that's what he's rifling through his cabinets, right?
Yeah.
He's going through his memories to pull out what makes him so special. And like in that moment, I was like, okay, so this is who Armand is as a person,
Mhm.
right? Armand was sold as a slave, like sold into slavery as a boy, right? So he never had a personality. He never got to know who he was. He never got to come into himself as a person. He went from I am a boy to I am a slave for a master who's a vampire. I am a concubine, right? and a sex slave for this person and their friends, right? Because he turns them out. Then eventually the vampires find out how badly he's being treated, and they install him to replace the leader of the French coven. Then he's a bottom dwelling man. He doesn't even question the disgusting living situation and the squalor that he's in. He doesn't try to make any changes when he's installed there. He just does the status quo, right? Armand is kind of a beige pillow when you really think about it. Like, even the Armand that we get in the 1940s is a product of Lestat, right? Armand before Lestat is just a bottom feeding vampire that lives in, like, you know, a fucking ossuary underneath a church, right? Like, he's not anything really. Like, he has power, but he doesn't really use it for anything. He doesn't have any ideas of his own of, like, what to do next. Or he needs someone to do that for him. So he becomes special. He becomes what that other person wants, right? He became what his master wanted. He became what Lestat wanted. He's trying to figure out how to become what Louis wants, because he recognizes that because Daniel was not consummated, because they didn't have sex, and because Louis didn't kill him, that there must be something special about him. And he's like, I intend to find out. So the way he does that is by torturing him and going through his fucking headspace, right? Meanwhile, it's all to make sure that he can keep a hold on the person that he has chosen to be his one right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, dude, that's like centuries of pathology. Centuries of that shit, of not knowing who you are and having to kind of figure it out and just adopt it. And that's what he's trying to fucking do here with Daniel, so that he can better ensnare Louis.
Crazy.
Like
Yep.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so he's like, just, oh, I also forgot to mention right before that, Armand finds the tape and then puts it on the table, presses play, and it's Louis talking about our Lestat the whole time.
Yeah.
And he's like, God. So then he flies in that fucking rage.
Yep.
Does all that with Daniel. He's like, what makes you special? Like, he's out here comparing me. And it's funny because it's like, people have this criticism too of like Ariana Grande right now, of like, she adapts to whoever she's around.
That's true.
You know? And it's like very interesting to watch it played out in this way of like over centuries of like, he is not his own person. Armand is the mirror of what he thinks somebody else needs, which is crazy.
But then he also is resentful of that, right? He resents that he has to do that, but he doesn't have an alternative. It's not like he has somewhere else to be or something else to do, right? Like, he hates that that's how he is. And instead of trying to change that, he seeks to control and change the person.
Imagine a vampire therapist.
No. Oh, I actually play a vampire therapist in Philly by Night.
Love that.
I play Vampire the Masquerade, and my character is a vampire therapist, and she is honestly just the fucking worst. A vampire therapist, deeply manipulative. Bad idea.
Yeah.
Bad idea.
Is she a vampire therapist for other vampires? Or a vampire therapist for humans?
So she, both. But like the story that I'm in, because I'm only in a one shot so far, I haven't been like brought into like the series proper. Like, I just was a guest star for someone else that had made that NPC. Basically, there's a woman that my character loved, Annalie, and Annalie is like too good for my character. My character is part of the Ministry, which is like a sect of vampires that just do whatever they want. They live like outside the code, right? They don't care about glamour, like glamoring people to forget that they're vampires and stuff. They try not to live out loud so they don't get killed, but they're like not really worried about feeding on humans. They do whatever they want, right? Wherever the wind takes me. Kind of like the Satanists of the vampire world. Like, Satanists believe you should do whatever is good for you. Yeah. That's basically the Ministry. So basically, she recognizes that her girlfriend needs to stay clean to get all her goals, and decides that one day when Annalie decides that there's a fledgling that she wants to take under her wing, she would decide she wants to turn this boy that's a fashion designer. My character, Amelia, is like, I'm that boy's therapist. And I know him. And I know how he is. And he's not one of you. He's one of me. I'm going to turn him. So she, like, turns the boy out from under the person who was actually going to be the boy's sire.
Oh.
And then leaves him. Just, like, abandons him.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the whole episode is like flashbacks to
Mhm.
the sessions of like me and the guy who plays the regular character, because I was an NPC brought to life. So the flashbacks are all like me and Jean Pierre talking back when Jean Pierre was human. And
Mhm.
I was his therapist, and I start asking all these leading questions that are very like testing the waters of, would you be a good vampire? Would you wreak havoc in the name of the ministry? Right? Like it's very
Mhm.
like asking these kind of circumnavigating questions to get to what I actually want to ask, that I can't because I'm a vampire in secret. And then like the moment of reckoning where he comes back to me and finds out that I left him and is like, I hate you, and has the whole like, I hate my mom kind of
Yeah.
energy. But yeah, I play a vampire therapist on TV. Not on
Love
TV.
that.
On YouTube,
Yeah.
But I play a
On the
vampire
show.
therapist, and it's great because basically you can do whatever you want. Like, there's no higher manipulation than a vampire therapist.
Love that.
hmm hmm It's also a video game, Vampire Therapist.
Really?
Yeah, they just came out with a video game called Vampire Therapist.
I might need to play that, to be honest.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was like a little treat for me. But I think Armand
Oh,
needs a therapist, is what I'm saying.
Armand needs so many therapists. Something that I also found interesting, we kind of talked about this, touched on this earlier, how like how time is still passing in real
Mhm.
time, right? Because Armand is going to be back eventually. So Louis and Daniel are sharing this very special moment together, but time is passing. So when they cut back from those scenes of Armand kind of rifling through Daniel's memories and he hits that wall where he kind of can't see further, that happens because in the like retelling, it kind of abruptly stops and then Daniel like opens his eyes and
Yeah.
the camera pulls back and they're no longer at the dining room table.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere. You never see them move. They don't talk about it. It's
Mhm.
not brought up, right? It's just suddenly they're somewhere else. And it's colossal because you're like you mentioned at the beginning of the episode, they're always in the dining room, right?
Mhm.
So like for him to suddenly be in the Zen garden with
Yeah.
his feet in the sand, right? With his feet in the rocks of the Zen garden,
Mhm.
I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
What is happening right now? His little shoes are next to him. I
So
was like,
adorable.
I don't know how I feel about this. This is either really cute or terrifying. I can't decide.
But I love that, like, Louis like, "This is the only thing I know how to do." So he's like, "Alright,
Mhm.
I need you to remember. I really need you to remember." And Daniel's like, "I don't know." And he's like, "Remember, like, you need to do this for both of us." They're,
Close
like,
your
trying
eyes.
to ground each other. They're, like,
Dig your
holding
feet deeper in the
hands.
sand.
Yeah. They're, like,
You can
holding
do
hands
it.
right now, you know? And so,
Dude, also, I don't mean to interrupt.
you're good.
They have the Zen garden. We've seen the Zen garden in other scenes, right? The Zen garden is not a new location. We've
Yeah.
seen Armand and Louis in the Zen garden in season 1 and season 2. We know that it exists in the house with the cherry blossom inside and everything.
Mhm.
It's gorgeous, beautiful framing. They're in that scene, and I'm going, so if that's what the rocks are for, if that's what the Zen garden is for, to focus
Yeah.
and to find missing parts of yourself,
Mhm.
what has Armand been doing to Louis the whole time he's been in the Zen garden, bruh?
Literally.
Like,
Literally.
what?
Is there an alert on Armand's phone whenever somebody enters the Zen garden? You know what I mean?
Hello? Like, what? And Louis like, oh, Armand has taught me this. And I'm like, Armand is teaching you about meditation and how to go deeper in your memory? Excuse?
Yeah, Armand's like, and then you just keep counting and keep counting
Mm,
and keep counting and keep counting, and you don't explore further. You just count. You count, and that's meditation,
dangerous.
literally. And then Daniel's like, at one point, Louis is like, "What's the point of this?" And Daniel's like, "No point other than fuck your boyfriend," which is so funny, so funny. So at this point, they're like interviewing each other, trying to remember what happened. And he's like, Armand also seemed to be like in a trance talking to somebody. Like when he was like
Mm-hmm.
torturing me before he like ran into your room. Like I don't know who he was talking to, but he seemed to be like talking with someone, which is
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Armand goes and screams at Louis, and he's like, I think you were using the interview to get back with Lestat. And then turns out he was talking to Lestat.
Dude.
Oh my god. I was like, what? What do you mean? What
Dude.
do you mean? He's like, I'm talking to Lestat right now. Tell him what you want to tell him. Like, if you want to be back with him, I'll tell him right now. Like, blah, blah,
That
blah. I'm like,
that
oh.
moment, I was like, okay, so then both of them are acknowledging that Lestat
Mhm.
is alive, which means Louis knows Lestat is alive. And I'm like, if Louis knows Lestat is alive, what are we even doing here right now? What are we doing?
Mhm.
Why is this? And granted, in the book, right, or at least in the movie, right, Louis does know that Lestat survived, right? Like Louis
Mhm.
does know that Lestat is out there and whatever. And so that's not a surprise. But the way that they kind of foist it on you here as the viewer, it's like, hold on, what? Right? Like,
Yep.
you know, fucking,
Yep.
and then like, or so Armand like gives him that, right, and tells him that. But like one of the things that he says to Louis in like the argument that really fucking sits with me, such a fucking martyr complex, dude. Armand is the most martyr complex, and that's something that I think I love the holdover from the book and the movie to the show, because
Mhm.
every iteration of Armand has a martyr and like a savior complex, right? He looks at Louis and goes, "If you want to escape from this prison of empathy I've built for you, you could
Ugh.
have asked."
Ugh.
And I'm like, number one, prison of empathy?
Oh my god.
Sir, are you listening to yourself? A prison of
Yeah.
empathy. Like,
Literally.
sir, you could have used cage. You could have used box. You could have used pen. You could have used barnyard. There's a million locations you could have used other than a prison
Of
of
empathy.
of empathy of all things, right? Of
Mhm.
empathy. And then to say you could have just asked, as though this motherfucker has not been changing fucking memories this entire time.
Literally.
Could he have asked Armand? Could he have asked you to release him?
Honestly.
I don't think he could.
Also, the other thing, he's like, what were you hoping? That Lestat was just gonna, like, walk by, pick up your book, read it, get back to you, like, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my god. Like, and Louis, like, twirling his hair between his fingers, like, maybe,
Maybe.
bitch.
It's not your fucking business, okay?
Oh, and then Armand, he's like, what am I gonna do? Be on suicide watch forever? Oh my god.
Listen.
I'm like, you drove him
Yo.
there. You literally.
Yo. And then you're going to throw it in his face
I know.
while he's convalescing. Mm,
Like, literally,
mm.
he's basically like, Armand handed him the gun, drove him to the side of the building. Like, he's like, literally parked the car, helped him out of the vehicle, and he's like, I cannot believe you did that.
Mm,
That's crazy. What do you.
mm,
How did we get here? What happened? Like, oh my
dude.
god.
And then Armand being like, hey, I've got Lestat on the line. What do
Mm
you want to say to him?
hmm. Mm hmm.
I've reached out to him. I can hear him. And we hear him, right? We know
Yeah.
he's not bluffing.
Yep.
Lestat is out there.
Mm
And
hmm.
he's like, Louis, you hurt yourself. Is everything okay? And Armand's like repeating what Lestat is saying to him in his mind to tell Louis. And then Lestat calls Louis mon cher,
Mm hmm.
my love, right? But like, doesn't tell Louis that Lestat said, I love you.
Yeah.
Ends the call. Sorry, I can't hear. Breaking up, click. Like, literally does the, can you hear me now? No? All right, I'm going into an elevator. Like,
Mm hmm.
literally
Mm hmm.
does that to Lestat. And I'm like, that's bold.
Yeah.
That's bold. Like, you open this connection and then fail to tell him that he still loves him.
Mm hmm.
It's
And you
all
know, Lestat's
game.
throwing shit. Like,
Yep.
oh my god. Like, you flash to Lestat and, like, a what is probably, like, a medieval dungeon. Like, fucking tables are knocked over, he's screaming, things are on fire in the background, somehow there's rats running around, and
Oh
he's,
my
like, fully
god.
losing his mind.
Oh my
Um,
god.
then I was, like, trying to figure out after that whole moment, I was like, is Armand trying to get Daniel to kill himself because he like decides to like prophesize his
Mm-hmm.
entire life and he's like, you're gonna have two failed managers, all your kids are gonna hate you, like you're gonna value work over your family, everyone's gonna abandon you, like, and I'm like, oh my god, like he's forcing his life to go this way almost, like basically putting it so ingrained that this is the way his life has to go that it becomes true.
What I do find interesting is that even in his moment of like pure chaos, even in his moment of his partner absolutely putting him through the fucking paces and through the ringer,
Mhm.
there's a moment where the scene kind of ends, right? Where Armand says all of that. Louis comes out and goes, hey, because he's about to bite him, right? Because
Yeah.
Armand is like, this is basically what your life is going to be. Rest.
Yeah.
Rest, right? We find out rest is his trigger word, right?
Mhm.
One of his trigger words, rest, rest. You don't need this life anymore. You're fine. If you keep going, this is what your life's going to be. It's all your life's going to be. And you know that. I know that. We both know that. Rest. Like, you don't need this life, right? Basically talks him into giving him what he wants, which, number one, I thought you said he wasn't violent.
Literally?
That's violence. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's not violence in a traditional sense, but that's fucking violence. That's
Mhm.
quiet violence, dude. That's emotional
Mhm.
and mental warfare. That's fucked, right? That's way worse than punching someone in the face. I'm sorry. That's number one, right? And then number two goes to bite him. And Louis like, hey, I need him alive. No,
Yeah.
no, I need him alive. Don't do this, right? And convinces Armand to not go there. So
As a
Louis sits down.
testament to the relationship as well.
Right. See, our relationship's starting over, baby. This is it. I'm giving this up. He's my big moment. He's my one ask, sweetheart. I'll do whatever you want from now on. We're going to be a happy little family, right? Which is
Mhm.
Louis back in his box, right? Very much back in his box, just like he
Mhm.
was with Lestat, right? Only worse, arguably. And Louis sits down next to Daniel and he whispers something that we can't hear. And then they flash back to present day and Daniel just gets up without speaking and
Mhm.
walks away. And Louis is like obviously confused, right? He's like, fuck, what is happening? What did I do? Did something happen? And Daniel comes back and he reads the line that you're supposed to understand as what Louis said to him in his ear.
Mhm.
I love that even in all of this turmoil and all of this loss and all of this sadness and all of this like misery that they go through in that room, in that house, Louis still looks out for Daniel. Because everything Armand said about his wife and his kids was true. But Armand basically said to him, you're never going to be able to hold down a job. You're going to be working in a fucking shitty office with drab carpets and flashy bulbs of lighting above you. It's going to
Mhm.
be terrible. You're going to hate your life. You're never going to make anything of yourself. There's no point, right? That was the whole point of Lestat, of what Armand had to say, was all of the stuff about his wife and his kids, right? His wives and his kids, but like also the part about him being a failure. And Louis goes, you're not going to be a failure. You're young and you're smart and you're meant to be a journalist. Like you're
Mhm.
meant to do this job and you're going to go out there and you're going to be great.
Yeah.
And Daniel closes the book and is like, 2 failed marriages. My kids don't talk to me, but I've always had a job. The
Mhm.
day I met you, I wasn't sure if I'd ever work again. And I've never not had a job.
I don't know if you caught this, but he thinks so basically he kept that piece even though Armand tried to erase it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's in his memoir that he wrote that in. So he's
Mm-hmm.
reading it out of his memoir and he's like, I thought that piece, I thought the guy was telling me that when like after I was in the drug den.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I woke up in the drug den, that's what I remember.
Yep.
And
A
he's like,
junkie said it.
yeah. And he's like, and turns out it was you. And Armand couldn't erase that. So the two of them
Mm-hmm.
are like staring at each other. They're like, oh fuck, Armand has erased this entire moment out of both our
Mm-hmm.
minds. I thought he couldn't even do, like, how the fuck did he do that? And as they're like having that moment, staring each other in the eyes, Armand walks in wearing the douchebag
The
sunglasses.
fucking
The
sunglasses
sunglasses.
murdered me.
Yeah.
Murdered me.
Yep. Yep.
And he's like cock of the walk too. You can tell he's different. He strides in all fucking big chest. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
really, dude? Really, dude? Your
Mm-hmm.
boyfriends have been talking, okay?
Yeah.
You think your boyfriends don't talk? Well, guess what? They're talking. You
Mm-hmm.
don't even know. Like,
Yeah. And then he's like looking between the both of them and he's like, yeah, we were just talking about San Francisco. Um and
immediately gets suspicious. What about San Francisco?
yeah,
Takes the sunglasses off. What happened?
yeah. And he's like, oh, when I saved you? Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
It's
That was
giving when your wife and your girlfriend meet for the first time
mm-hmm.
and you don't know how much of a conversation they've had.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What movie's that? Where it's like Sandra Bullock's in there, I think. Not Sandra
Oh my
Bullock.
goodness. So many Sandra Bullock movies running through my mind right
It's
now.
not Sandra Bullock. It's that girl that has like the like I don't think she was actually in Sex and the City, but she feels like she should have been. I don't know.
That's a good description.
Yeah. I'll think of it later. They're like at like this lake house and like
Mhm.
one's the wife, and then she's like, after she's like, I did everything for him. She was like a stay-at-home wife that like very much prim and proper. And then they like have like this rager party afterwards, and she's like, fuck it, like
I
whatever.
mean, if it's called The Lake House and Keanu Reeves is in it, that is Sandra Bullock.
Maybe. I don't know. I'll have to look it up later and I'll get back to you.
Please.
But I know he was like a like businessman job or a tie kind of guy, and then like they like both go into the meeting room, and I think they like end up pitching another product or something that like is better than whatever he could have done. And then they're like,
Hell
oh my
yeah.
god. I don't know.
We were the dream team all along. I love stories like that.
Me too. I don't care how fucking cheesy it is.
You don't need that man.
Literally. Leave his ass. You know what I mean?
That's all I'm screaming this entire show. You don't need him, Louis. You're so handsome. You can have whoever you want, and they will treat you right. Like,
I'm just
one of the things that I wrote down that I forgot to say, when Armand is saying all of that to Daniel, he kind of says that he's been watching him. Did you catch that?
I did not.
Oh my God. So he talks to him about his routine and what his life has been like. And I'm like, so is this one of those, you know what your partner is going to be into?
Yeah.
Like, you know what kind of dudes that like your partner gravitates towards. So you have been watching him for weeks. Like, he talks to him about like, oh yeah, I mean, I see how you are. I see what you do. And I can tell you how the rest of your life is going to play out. Like, before he tells him like all the things that he's going to be, like he talks to him about the places he's been, the bars he goes to, right?
Oh, true.
Like, it's very like offhanded, but like he basically says all of that. And I'm like, so you've been like eavesdropping for a minute. You eavesdrop on all of the boys. That's how you know that this one's different.
Crazy.
Okay, buddy. Okay. All right.
Yeah. We're going to have so much to talk about next episode, and I cannot wait for it.
Rachel, I've seen some of next episode. It is a spicy.
A spicy.
Oh, spice. Oh my goodness, so spice. Oh no. Be prepared, y'all.
I can't wait. I cannot wait.
This episode gets kinky though.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you realize that part, the kinkiness at the end. They're having the conversation where Louis is trying to negotiate with Armand, right? About keeping Daniel alive. They're trying to have that little talk. And Armand looks at Louis. And this isn't the first time we've heard him call him this, but before I thought it was part of the act. This is like the first time they're alone, more or less. And Armand calls him maître.
Yeah.
Right? Maître means master in French. And I'm like, so when we hear him say maître before, it's when he's in front of that painting and he's talking about his life as a slave, right? And he's talking about his maître and what he had to do for that person and all that stuff, right? So he looks at Louis and calls him that. And I'm like, wait a minute, what?
Oh.
Why are you suddenly calling Louis that? I think you know that you've had the upper hand pretty much this entire time. So because there's going to be a power reversal, right? An inverse of power, you're going to call him maître in this moment. You're going to call him master. So first of all, as a Black person, I cannot express how delighted I am that the scene is happening with two brown people, because it would be real dicey if Louis were a white man, right?
Yeah.
I love that it's happening with two people of color, because A, that is even kinkier in a lot of ways, because you know that that's healing, right? And B, it's highly manipulative that he's calling him that, especially in this moment when he has actively betrayed him over and over again. It is the illusion of power, and that is scary. I was a pro-dom for 5 minutes in my 20s. The reason I got out of it, and the thing that I learned, is that depending on the way that you want to conduct your business, and it has to be your business, depending on the way you want to conduct your business in that setting, you're never actually in charge.
Yeah.
Because a person is paying you, right? So ultimately, they have the upper hand, even when they're under your foot, because they pay your bills, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not doing what they want you to do within reason, right? Obviously, part of being a dominatrix is doing things that people don't, quote unquote, want you to do, but want you to do, right? That's why safe words exist, to press those boundaries and to find new experiences there, right? But like, the power exchange is an illusion, because at the end of the day, you're reliant on them for money if it is a pro-dom situation, right? Which means that your boundaries can be pushed without you really noticing. After working as that in that role for like 5 minutes, I was like, this isn't for me. And then I started talking to other pro doms because I was working at a store that sold like latex and leather and kink items.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to have people come in all the time and we talk shop about their business and what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a story that I got over and over and over again, how it's conditional power exchange, right? It's always temporary. It's not something where you're even guaranteed respect,
Yeah.
like basic respect outside of those moments, right? People think they can call you all hours. They think they can say whatever they want to you because you're getting paid, right? College students to a lesser degree sometimes have this energy too. I pay your bills, Professor so-and-so, and you're going to
Yeah.
give me, right, that entitlement. Like, that's very much the vibe when it comes to like kink, like professional kink relationships. So when this scene came up, I was like, this is TPE, total power exchange, right? This is part of BDSM and kink.
Mm-hmm.
But like he's wielding this over Louis to make him feel like he's in control and to make him feel like he's in charge, even though he obviously isn't, right? Anyone can see that Armand is absolutely the leader in that relationship.
Yeah.
But he tries to make Louis feel over and over and over again like he's in control, right? Even the prison of empathy I've made for you, even that is very much a veiled version of you're not really in charge. I made you a prison of empathy, a
Mm-hmm.
prison of empathy, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that is the same fucking thing. And like, Armand is basically a bottom who occasionally does what he's told, but ultimately has a vengeful streak that causes him to hurt the people that he loves. Like, that's who he is as a person, right?
Yeah.
And like seeing that come to life is so interesting because he's so benign, especially when you think about the first few episodes of the show and who Armand was there, where he was pretending to be Rashid,
Mm-hmm.
where he was in service. Like, he goes back to a traumatic role
Mm-hmm.
to dissemble so that he can get his way. He's willing to put himself into a position where he is in servitude once
Mm-hmm.
again, but this time on his own terms so that he can be fucking nosy and control the narrative from afar. Because you know he's working on Daniel all season 1, whether we know it or not.
Yeah.
You know that he's like pussyfooting around because Daniel's not thinking that he's a vampire. So he doesn't have his defenses up until the end of season 1.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So crazy.
Mm. Mm. This show, man, it's so well thought out. Like, the writing is fantastic. Like, it's like they're slowly unspooling a ball of yarn, right? Like, it's nice and slow, and then suddenly it's fast, and you're like,
And like,
ah!
oh my god. That is all we have for this episode. Candace, where can the people of the internet find you and all the things you're working on?
You can find me at the Candace Marie on Blue Sky and to a lesser degree Twitter. And you can find me at Candace Magnificent pretty much everywhere else. I should be streaming in 2025, hopefully on Mondays and Wednesdays, but check my social to see if you'd like to ever join me on Twitch. And then you can also hear me in the podcast's Frequencies, Partial Veil, Three Black Halflings, New AP, City of the Black Rose, Herald of Shadows, and Bloom and Blight.
And then we'll also see you here in 2 weeks
That's
on the
right.
next episode. Bye, everybody.
Bye!